Okay, friends, this is day 15, the last day of our Daniel study, and we are going to look at Daniel 12, and then we're going to look at the book of Daniel as a whole, and Alex and I are just going to reflect a little bit together on what we've learned, some of the major themes, and some things that we hope that you've seen. But we also hope that through some emails, through some comments, if you're engaging with the study online, that you'll let us know how it is that Daniel's spoken to you. Alex, I don't know about you, but I always want to appreciate getting that stuff, but then too, learn things when we hear from you about what it is that that you've learned. So we'd love to engage with you in that way. So let's open up Daniel chapter 12 together. Like I said, we'll spend a little bit of time here, and then we'll look at the book as a whole. So Alex, when you look at Daniel chapter 12, what are some things that stick out to you here?
Yeah, so I look at chapter 12 as being kind of the culminating chapter. It's whoever this author was, it's their last kind of hurrah, their last message to the people, a people who, like the original characters of Daniel, would have been living under a foreign king, under foreign rule, wondering when, hope would return, when they could count on God to rescue them from their current situation. And that's not really the message we get. We don't get like an end time for when things will get better. The message is in verse 3, those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many others to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. So instead of this, here's when you can expect things to get better, it's just, hey, while you're in it, while you're in the dark times, while you're in the season where it feels like God may not be with you or you don't know what to do, just shine like the brightness of the sun. Continue to be faithful, which is what we've seen Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do this whole time. And then the very last line of the chapter in the book, too, it kind of echoes this point. Go your way until the end, and you shall rest and stand in your allotted place at the end of the days. Like, go your way till the end. This whole book is setting up two choices. Be faithful, be unfaithful. And it says, just go your way. Whichever way you're going to choose, go your way. And at the end, you'll stand in your allotted place. Yeah. Whichever way you choose, it has an allotted place at the end. Go your way, and that's where you'll be. And there's a lot of numbers in this chapter, and I can't make sense of them. Many scholars have tried for generations. But what I read today that really resonated with me is what the numbers do is not give us an exact date, but it does say that they are numbered, right?
Oh, that's good.
There is an end, and when it comes, you can expect for there to be hope at the end of the road. You don't know, we can't make sense that the math doesn't all work out. They're probably more symbolic than they are like actual periods of time, but what it shows is there is an end. It will get better. Hope is still there for these people and for us.
Yeah, and for us, right? Yeah. That's really good. I like that a lot. When we look back at difficult times that we have been through, it's easy for us to look back and kind of, in some ways, romanticize that time, especially when we're looking at like other people and the times that they've been through, and to view that through the lens of how, in the end, everything worked out and it was fine, and we see everything that we learned through the time and the darkness and all that stuff. But when the book ends, the people who, as you said, who it was written to, who it was written for, they're still underneath this foreign oppression, right? So they're still in the metaphorical valley. So when you look at chapters 1 through 6, they're reflecting back on a time when Israel was underneath this foreign oppression, and eventually they made it through. So you can look back on that time and remember that God ultimately was faithful. But it's kind of nice that the prophecy part, 7 through 12, it doesn't wrap up with a bow. No. Because they're still in it. Yeah, just like I think every generation that comes after this will feel in some way like they're still in it, right? Until the very end, like when Revelation comes true, every generation of God's people is going to feel like what the past 5 chapters of Daniel have been talking about. That there are these kingdoms like beasts who are ruling the world with violence and force and aggression, fighting each other. But yet, don't worry about any of that. Go your way. Because I think it's important. Like, we talk about darkness, but it's important to recognize the reality of the darkness that this is talking about. This is talking about every day you wake up and you're not sure,
what your life is going to be like that day, if you're
Right.
going to end up dead because the king woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Like,
Right.
This is not like darkness of, oh, like my life isn't exactly the way I want it. And if this can be true for them, how much more is it true for us?
That's good.
Right?
This is the person who is on the ICU floor at Children's Med.
Yeah.
Right? And they don't know if their kid is going to make it.
Yes.
And what they do is they reflect back on the story of other families who God has been faithful to, and they like write down those stories. Like, God has been faithful to this family and this family and this family. That's like the first 6 chapters. And then the second 6 is like them in their present time. Like, in thinking about the future and all of those
Yeah.
things. But it ends with them still in the ICU room, not sure how long they will be there or which way this will turn, but saying the days are numbered, and we know at the end of days that all things will be well. Actually, it's more like the nurse writing this, like
Yeah.
for the people who are still there,
Yeah.
right? Like, I know that you're still in the middle of it, so I'm not going to put a fancy bow on it, but know that in the end, all things will be well.
Well, and why will all things be well? Because and I talked about this in a video previously, because the center of the book, the central message
Yeah.
is that chapter 7, 13, and 14, the Ancient of Days, there's coming one who's going to be given a kingdom that will last forever, that will not pass away, will not be, like, that's the hope that all this rests
Yeah.
on. So
Yeah.
it's not that we just, grin and bear it and just count
Yeah.
down the days. We have hope because if we know who Jesus is.
Right.
Like, that's, like, it's not just an empty hope that we just, hope to get by for the next day. It's, no, we can rest in who Jesus is and the promises of God. That's where that hope comes
All
from.
right, that's really good. Okay, let's sit on that for a second. So hope, when we say hope, you can mean a couple of different things. Culturally, what hope often means is like you're like crossing your fingers.
Yeah.
Like, I hope this works out, right? But that's not, when the scripture
No.
uses hope, that's not the way that the authors of the scripture are using hope. It's like a sure and a certain hope. It's, hope is a certainty about how things will be one day.
Yes.
And therefore I can live with hope, as in peace and joy and all that, and anticipation of when everything is put back together.
Yeah.
It's not, I hope things will be fine. It's, I know things will be fine, and therefore I have hope
Right.
in the present. And of
Yeah.
course, the hard part is that things being fine doesn't always mean they're fine in the way that we want them to be fine, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
the way that Israel's story plays out, with Jesus coming, redeeming the nation, inviting the Gentiles in, all of those things, it is not what even the author of Daniel is
Right.
anticipating. And in fact, it's not the way that the author of Daniel probably would have wanted things to work out. But it actually ends up being, in the end, way better. God's plan is way better than anything he could have even dreamed of.
Yeah, and I think that's why, even though we try really hard to put names and faces and time periods to these symbols in these last 5 chapters, I think what Daniel is doing, the author of Daniel is doing, is making it so vague so that every generation can see themselves as part of
that's
this
right.
story. So they know it's not just that happened to them. No, like, we're still dealing with this kind of darkness in our world today, even now, and our generation that comes after us will still be
Yeah.
dealing with it until the day when Jesus comes back and
Yeah.
everything is put right. So I think it's an intentional vagueness because we're supposed to see ourselves in their shoes too.
That's good. Yeah, it's not Daniel's story in 5th century BC, and it's not the author's story in the 2nd century BC. It's our story.
Yeah.
We find ourselves.
Yeah.
We find ourselves here. That's really really good. And kind of landing that plane back in verse 13 here. But go your way till the end, right? You read this earlier. And you shall rest and shall stand in your allotted place at the end of days. So I see your 2 things that there is so much in 7 through 12 that just does not make any sense to me. And then it's like this restores some sanity at the end of it. Like it
Yeah.
lands the plane with 2 things. The second part first, and you shall rest and stand in your allotted place at the end of days. All things will be well. Julia Norris says, all things will be well, all things will be well, all manner of things will be well, right? Like we know, so that's one. We have that sure and certain hope. But then also the first part of verse 13, but go your way till the end. So then what is our response? Knowing that things will be well in the end, our response is to be faithful in the present.
Yeah.
If I don't know that things will be well in the end, then I am probably just going to like do my best, eat, drink, and be merry, or whatever, and just live in the present. Okay, I need to live in anticipation of things being well in the end, and therefore, I need to be faithful.
Well, and isn't that what this whole book is about?
I think so.
It's the choice between, are you going to be faithful, or are you going to give in to all of those pressures? Right.
And I would go ahead.
No, you go.
And I would put the one in the middle too. We talked about this in Cornerstone a few weeks ago. There's like the full-on assimilation.
Yeah.
There's the faithfulness, and then, which are the two that you're talking about, which I think you're right about. But so many of us, read me, find myself in the middle where it's like a compromise.
Yeah.
And I want to believe that compromising in the middle is a faithful option, but in reality, it's just a slower fade.
Yeah.
Towards like the full-on compromise, the full-on assimilation. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they see through that, and they're like, no, we got to be all in here.
Yeah, I think it boils down to the question of worship. Who will you worship? When it's not just like faithfulness, like grit it and obedience and bear it. It's about worship. Who is your life going to be oriented around? And I think that this book is so very clear. Daniel has to face that. Is he going to pray even though he's been told not to pray to God?
Right.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, are you going to worship this idol, or which is like the number one thing that the Old Testament says don't do is worship other idols.
Right.
I think that's the one thing God gets the angriest about all through the Old Testament.
Yeah.
It's like the first 2 commandments are about that in Exodus, in the Exodus story. So they have to face that. Nebuchadnezzar chooses to worship himself.
Right.
So it's that idea of like, who are you going to worship? Are you going to follow culture, worship your political party, worship yourself, worship your friend group or whatever, or are you going to worship the one thing that matters, that will be here for the end of all of those other things are going to go away. The only thing worth worshiping is the thing that's never going to change, that is everlasting. And I think that's the choice that we're put here is worship the thing that matters and be faithful to that only, or your life is going to be this chaotic, like Nebuchadnezzar, you're going to fall. You're going to be brought low at some point, or you're going to be like these kingdoms that go to war with one another and rely on violence and force and define what's right for themselves and end up falling to a greater kingdom.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And what we hope is that through these Bible studies the last 15 days and through the Cornerstone sermons, that some of this has become really practical to you. To see, okay, this isn't just some kind of ancient wisdom that mattered to people then, but it matters to us today. This idea of all of us have these golden images in our life, and the question is, what's asking too much of us?
Yeah.
What wants too much of our time? What wants too much of our energy, of our focus? What wants too much of us? So we hope that you have found some really practical ways to connect with us. And also, we're finding some really practical ways to live out a life of faith on your own, but also in community. And we always want to be here as this church to help you along those ways. So there's specific ways that we can help you, connecting you to people or helping you to navigate through any questions that you have. We want to be, Alex and I are available to you, as are a whole bunch of our staff members. We want to be available to you in that way. Okay?
Absolutely.
All right, I'm glad we did this. Let's wrap this up real quick by letting them know what's happening next. So we, in December, have another reading plan called Rooted. This is something that we've been really excited about for a long time, and we're going to walk through the story of the Old Testament as it leads up to the story of Jesus. That's going to start on
December 6th.
December 6th.
And we'll start with Genesis 1. We'll systematically go through the Old Testament, and then right around Christmas, we'll get to the New Testament, and it'll actually keep going for that week after Christmas. And on New Year's Eve, we will read the last chapter of the Bible. We are going to go from page 1 to the last page.
So we're excited about you jumping in. hpmc.org/Bible. We get you all the info that you need. God bless you, friends, and we'll see you for Rooted.